Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I'm joined by Mr. Owen Jackson for the Age of Sigmar Stat Center. That's right, we're here live to talk about the event results from Age of Sigmar around the world. And Owen, I've missed you. Where you been? How you been? What's been going on?
I've been working for the man, haven't I, Rob? I've been working for the
Me
man.
too.
Although I just caught sight of myself on the stream. It looks like I just woke up in the road or something. I've got quite a shabby vibe going on today, but we're going to roll with it. No, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm good. I think I was just saying then, like to mark it out of 10. I mean, you're a solid 9 with those dungers.
A lot of people.
Maybe...
If you listen to the podcast, big shout out to you. I hope you stay hydrated, you hydro homies. But a lot of people loving the dungarees on the Twitch stream. I want to say shout out to everyone on Twitch for joining us live, you gorgeous fellas. I'm feeling good today. Feeling good. Mainly because I did almost no work over the weekend, Owen.
That helps, right? Have a little bit of time off for once in your life. Even though it was, what would I say? It was like unplanned time off, but it looked really great though, man. Those pictures of you and Benjamin and everybody having ice creams, and it looked like you were having a Warhammer tournament on the shores of Lake Garda or somewhere in Italy. It looked pretty fancy pants, I must say. It looked great.
So what I was referencing is me and the TSN crew were at Bobo this weekend, so Bobo 2021, Heat 1. There are 2 heats. There's one now, there's one in November. It's at Nottingham University campus. We were meant to be doing the coverage. When we got there, as is always the way, they'd organised a hardline internet connection, and then the hardline internet connection wasn't working, which was quite funny. And then we tried to do it off our 5G kind of modem that we bring as a backup, and that wasn't strong enough, and so we elected just not to do it. But one of the cool things is we recorded 2 tables worth of games every round. So they're going to be going up over the next couple of days, because they're quite huge files to upload. They're like 10 gig, well, not 10 gig, sorry. No, they are. They're 10 gig of file to upload. Basically, it's a 3-hour file basically most of the time. But yeah, it was in Nottingham University, which is local to me. So that's fantastic. I love that. But the exciting thing about Nottingham University is that it's based around this huge, beautiful lake, which if you're local to Nottingham, you often will go on a date and you will get some kind of canoes, rowboats. It's very Victorian, yeah. You go for a little rowboat on the lake. It's super sweet. So the venue was actually pretty fantastic, and I really enjoyed my experience. Over the weekend. It was just a shame we couldn't do the actual coverage because there were some pretty interesting games, maybe more from a technical standpoint. But do you know what was really nice? We were kind of partitioned away. Sorry for going on about it, but we were partitioned away. And one of the really nice things was instead of just covering the 2 games and kind of going through that frantic pace, and most of you who won't have done coverage or even seen us doing coverage, it's a huge amount of work. But the bit you don't see is the volume of work you do in between games. You're picking your players, and I always love doing it at Bobo because Johnny and John run Bobo. John's like the host and Johnny does all the technical stuff. Johnny's a phenomenal, very much like Mark at Blood Tithe, Mark Wilson. Mark Wilson was like, here's your matches. I was like, thanks, Mark. And I trusted Mark to make them entertaining because he knew kind of my specifications. Johnny was very similar. But instead of that, I was just hanging out in the room, making sure all the tech was working for the recordings. And then I had an amazing chat with Simon Weekly, who might be I think 11 times smarter than me, 1100% smarter than me, and he's going to tell me that. Yeah, he's going to tell me that's not possible now. I got to speak to Benjamin and Math Mallow and all those guys constantly about Warhammer, and we were talking about Cruel Boys, and it was just fun. It was like I was at the event, but I just got to absorb Warhammer knowledge for the weekend. So actually, I had a great time. It was really fun.
Good. Well, I think you deserve that sort of weekend every now and again, man, because otherwise I've seen what those normal tournament weekends are like, and it's 1 million miles an hour, and all you're doing is doing. You're not necessarily having an opportunity to sort of soak up the atmosphere and have that learning there. So good for you, man. I was very jealous, I must say.
But I was also jealous because I was meant to be in Sweden also this weekend. That was another option, but we weren't allowed in Sweden. I saw Bobbin ask the question earlier. People from England aren't allowed in Sweden at the moment. We're not allowed to travel. We're considered a third world country. We're actually not a third world country. We're a third country or some sort of independent. I don't know what we are, but we're not allowed in. Sweden are like, fuck you. So not allowed in. And thanks to Pragmatic for donating 5 gift subscriptions. And yes, we did record matches with player audio and dice rolls, which is really fun. One of the exciting things is Andy Hughes won the event. You got to see him play his Seraphon against the 70 Pink Horrors, or I think it's known as the Tree Fiddy. Played by Mr. Simon Weekly, the Tree Fiddy, which was causing some consternation over the weekend. No one wanted to play the 70 Horrors. No one.
Yeah. I mean, he put in a chat on Monday morning, this morning. Yeah, today's Monday. He put in a chat going, "God, yeah, so it turns out my list, nobody wants to play my list." And I said to him, we all knew that the moment you submitted that list. It's like anti-fun. It's just like, I'm going to do a 1-drop. I'm going to teleport my pinks in front of you, and then you're going to have to get out of a big cage made of jelly for the next 4 turns. And when you finally break out, I've got all the points and all the gold. GG.
Well, just as a side note, because it led to maybe one of my funniest games of Warhammer ever. It was really funny. There was a lot of players who play a lot, especially Age of Sigmar 3. Some players, like yourself, you've been to 10, 11 events now. I think, is it 10 you've got under your belt?
No, I think it's actually 12, to be honest with you, Rob.
Wow. Yeah. So Owen's got 12 events under his belt, but people like Matt Mallow and Benjamin and Sam Weekly and Andy Hughes have all played a ton of events. Matt Goldsborough and Simon Weekly with the 70 Pink Horrors got drawn against Matt Goldsborough. And again, Matt must have been to a dozen or so events himself for Age of Sigmar 3. But what was very fun, we were in this kind of separate room. This kind of like the streaming area was, so it's kind of like moved away. So I would say it was a lot of people who were very competent having adult conversations about Warhammer, and it was really fun. Simon Weekly won they were both 1-drops. So Lumineth versus the 70 Horrors. Simon won the turn to go first, and then Matt was like, "Cool, let's not even deploy." Like it didn't matter. Like they didn't even bother with the deployment because he just moves. He bridged because he had bridge. Bridge is the 30. Yeah, makes the auto charge. It's impossible to get out. Yeah, pins the unit in. So pins the Warden sectors and everything else in. Makes you unable to achieve any battle tactics. You can't do any of them specifically. So it was like, what was hilarious is everyone else was just deploying and they were handing in their score sheets. And
I mean, it's hilarious, but it's also pretty bad for the game, right? When you think that it can be, you don't even need to deploy. That's wild. But they're teammates as well, and they would have talked about the list, so they know exactly what it does. So, yeah, why not have a couple? Was it the first game on the Sunday morning as well? So maybe
it was first game on the Sunday morning, and I think maybe had I not been there, I'd have been like, oh, is that some gossip? But it wasn't really. Like when you were there, like because what was good about Johnny as well. Like, oh God, this is such a long story now. I'm sorry, but Johnny was like, look, I want you to work all of it out. Go. Yeah, and then they were just like, cool, this is the situation. But it was a very unique situation, right? Because Simon ended up losing to Seraphon. No, he didn't. Simon got 12-8 against Seraphon, but he did lose to Sons of Behemoth. So, like, it's not a foregone conclusion, but it is a pretty problematic list, I'm going to say. But we can talk more about that on another show or just whatever. Like, it's pretty good. Loads of events from the weekend, though, to try and get back on topic, if that's possible.
I like being off topic. That was great. It was just like me and you having a conversation, and then I realised that we were live on the internet.
Well, do you know what I mean about the room of people though? It was really fun, where like literally everyone stopped playing their game, and it was a bunch of, in my opinion, very competent gamers who were all kind of invested in who placed well in the scoring and everything else. Just came around the table and were like, "Oh, explain it." We went through this. Conversation, and then we all just kind of chatted it out. It was just an interesting kind of thought exercise. Do you know what I mean? It was great. It was great fun. I had a great time.
Good.
Anyway, are you at the November Bobo, Owen? That's the question.
Yes, I am indeed. I am. I'm looking forward to it greatly. I'll see you there, Lee. Get the shots ready, baby. Let's go.
Ooh.
That was a big slap. Sorry for everyone on the podcast.
Right, so we have four 5-man events from this weekend to talk about.
We do. That's a lot of Warhammer, right?
Lot of Warhammer, lots of really good information to kind of deep dive. Should we start out with Michigan GT?
Yeah.
78 players. Now, interesting thing about our 4 events today for you guys to kind of like have a think about afterwards, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments if you watch this back on YouTube, or tweet us or something if you're watching it wherever. Is that 2 of the events are win, loss, draw, and again, if this is new, I'll make sure to explain it. So if you win 5 games, so that's 5 wins, then basically sometimes you get some points, but basically you went 5-0. And there might be some other people in 5-0, and sometimes there's a secondary to break those apart. And then, so like if you're 4-1, you've won 4 and you've lost 1. So 2 of the events are win, loss, draw. 2 of the events, though, are using the 20-0 system, so the differential system that I've talked about loads on the show. They use that as the primary. So instead of it being a win, loss, draw, they used the 20-0 system as the primary. And actually, one of the things I'd like to talk about today a little bit is how fascinating I find that to be, because actually it didn't make too much of a difference at Bobo, but it had a significant difference at Fanatic, basically. Like, because the person first lost a game. And the person in, I think, 6th, 7th went 5-0 in technical terms.
I saw that. Yeah, I did see that. Just as a slight aside then, Rob, you had a lot of, as you say, very competent, drilled gamers who play a lot of Warhammer at Bobo. Did you get a feel, or were there any opinions in the room there on that type of scoring?
Yes. I don't know. So there was a really good game between Dan Bradshaw and Benjamin Sava, and then another one between, so that game. And their game was like as discussed, very, very close. And I think it was an 11-9 to, and this isn't on in-game points, so your victory points in-game. This is tournament points. So the bigger the difference inside the game, so if I beat you by 24-4, that's 20 points difference. That would turn it into a 20-0. Where if I only beat you 14-4, it's 10 points difference. That would turn it into a 15-5. So their game was so close that it was an 11-9. So ultimately close. And again, when Dan with his 4 Mega Gargants played against Simon Weekly's 70 Pink Horrors, that was a 12-8 to Dan. So again, very, very close. But the interesting thing about the win-loss draw is that, and we all talked about it, and none of us really settled on, because it's a feeling, right? Like, you end up, like, in those games where they're very close, the score is really reflective of how close the game was. So actually, it's quite interesting, because if we didn't have that, if we just went win-loss draw, we would have heard about the 4 Mega Gargants beating the 70 Pink Horrors, and we wouldn't have had any, like, whatever. But actually, the fact that we know it was an 11-9, and we know that Dan made an 11-inch charge and a 10-inch charge, in order to secure that 2-point difference, which is what made it an 11-9, 2-point in-game, which made it an 11-9. Actually, we know that game was phenomenally close. And it's quite interesting. So, from, like, I'd like to analyze games perspective, 20-0 seems like a really, really nice way to look at it. But what you have to really overcome is you might win 5 games, but you might not come first. And I guess, like, I wonder what the Twitch chat think, and I wonder what you think. I think I would just use it as a secondary. It's kind of my takeaway. I would use the primary would be, I would just go for win-loss draw, and then the secondary would be the differential. But I could kind of see the argument. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I do remember playing a lot of games in AOS 2, and you would be like playing your little socks off and then get pipped at the end, and it would be a 20-0. And you'd be like, oh, that doesn't in any way feel representative of the game. So I like the granularity. I know that some people argue that they want a win to be a win. Much like Cinderfall Gaming saying that a win in football is a win, whether it's 1-0 or 5-0. But I think that Warhammer's more complicated than football, though, because it's not just get the ball in the goal. There's like,
agreed.
Now there's battle tactics and there's objectives and there's multiple paths to victory. I definitely like the differential in teams, but I'm not a huge details man, to be honest with you. I do like it being a meritocracy, though. Like, you play well, and you get a certain amount of points out of that sort of from the scoring system. Yeah, I think I like it, because the game is incredibly varied and incredibly granular, isn't it? So why not have a scoring system which reflects that granularity? Or, like somebody might just bust out a 12-inch charge and that then gets them the win, which gives them a massive 20-0, whereas you're like, I had control of that whole game. Yeah, there's some people like Pete and Cabbage, and I'm sure that there's some more analytical minds about the game that have some more clearer thoughts than me. But yeah, I also, Rob, there's lots of Warhammer going on, lots of tournaments. So why don't we try some different things and see where we settle? Nothing would ever get changed if we just kept it as it was. So
that's the kind of point. When we look at this stuff from the weekend just gone now, it'll be really interesting to just. It doesn't happen. So the interesting thing for UK events, at least going forward, because we have a Swedish event and a UK event from this weekend where it's happening. We also have War in the Heartlands in 2 weeks' time, which I'll be doing coverage from, which is still the 20-0 system as the primary. And we also have the next Bobo as well. And then in the UK, we also have Six Nations, which is doing an interpretation on the 20-0 system a bit, because primary's 15, right? Like a win's 15. But I agree with you. It's fascinating, and again, very much like the Stat Center, you and me, Owen, and the Twitch chat. So that's you, and if you've been listening to the podcast or watching it back, you guys have been pushing this 5-0, 4-1, 3-2 narrative that we've all been kind of talking about since Age of Sigmar 3 launched. So thank you all for kind of having that adult conversation. All of it's interesting. All of it. I guess what we're really asking is what makes it the most fun for all of us to do. That's what we're really asking every time. We want to go to events because that's what the Honest War Game is really about, and the Stat Center especially. We want to go and have fun, obviously, and what seems the fairest and makes the most sense. Who knows? Who knows if there's a perfect answer? But there might be a best compromise, and I'd love to know what everyone thinks, because I can see the chat going off about it. So keep going off, chat, you bunch of kings. The chat kings, let's go. All right, the stuff from the weekend. Owen, do you want to take me through some of it? Do you want to tell me what happened at Michigan?
Yes, let's do that. So this is the Michigan GT, based on the various bits of tournament software that we've got around. I think this was the biggest event from the weekend, so let's start there. So yeah, this is a place called Lansing in between Michigan and Detroit. I'll put a link in the chat now if people want to have a look at the lists or whatever. There we go. But yeah, so I had a little look at the meta overall just to see what sorts of armies were taken. So there were 78 players, 5 rounds. So the most popular army was Soulblight, Soulblight Gravelords. I think it's proving to be pretty popular worldwide. And then Gloomspite Gits actually had, so there were 8 Soulblight armies, then there were 6 Gits armies, 5 Ogre Mawtribes armies, and then quite a few armies on 4. So Sons of Behemat, Daughters of Cain, Ossiarch, Bone Reapers, Zeech, and Seraphon. So yeah, out of all those 78 players, there were 3 5-0s, Rob. Wow. And it may be the start of the new green tide. I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen this. It's really interesting. New book, new syndrome. So, we talked to a lot. Shout out to the Michigan GT boys. I love when new books are out because it's so exciting to be able to play with them. I don't believe in no FAQ, no play. And 2 of the events that we're going to talk about this weekend were allowing books, even if it was in some limited capacity, that haven't had the FAQ yet. I don't think there's anything actually in the Uruk Warclans that's super problematic. I think there might be in the Stormcast book, specifically Translocate, is the current conversation. It does allow you to move afterwards, which is the main problem at the moment. But that's still I still believe that's kind of like a fair usage, especially if there happens to be any people locally at those events who happen to have foreknowledge. I don't know if that's necessarily true at any of the events we're talking about, but if you did happen to be a playtester or you did happen to be someone who had advanced knowledge of what the rule sets are, you can put yourself in a really positive position. That said, it's really exciting to see their first placings, right? Because I think we're seeing a couple of examples of that this weekend. And yeah, the green tide. Do we think think it's going to go really well. We know that there's going to be some Shoot and Bolt Boy lists coming out from the Cruel Boys, and in fact, actually, friend of the show and Cobra Kai friend went 4-1 this weekend, so shout out to him. But then we also have seen in the 5-0 bracket, we've seen 2 Uruk lists.
Yeah. So starting off, this is Donnie Goerlitz, with a Bloodtoofs Ironjawz list. So, if anybody hasn't caught it, that show the other week that you did with Leo will really get you jazzed about Ironjawz, and obviously someone's done really well this weekend. So this is Donnie. I'm not sure. Have we got the list on the Honest Wargamer?
The list is on the Honest Wargamer website, and it is on the screen.
Hey, look at that. Okay, I better click the button then. Here we go. So Bloodtoofs. So Bloodtoofs, you used to see a little bit, right, Rob? I think they used to have the Quick Duff Amulet, and we used to see that auto teleport. But is it now that you just basically get multiple Violent Fury off the War Chanter? Is that correct? Is that the way it's always?
Yes. But I was actually trying to research this earlier, just before the show started, and then I unfortunately lost 15 minutes of show prep because my app logged me out and won't let me re-sign in, and I uninstalled it, reinstalled it, and I bought the books. Oh, they're around here somewhere. Put the code in. I was like, and then I just didn't go on Wikipedia to find out because it got lost in translation. But I think potentially, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if we go through every single list, this is going to be a 5-hour show, so we won't do that. But it's basically double Maw Crusher, double Maw Crusher, double War Chanter, a Shaman, and then 4 units of 3 Gore Grunters in a double Warlord. I think we're going to see double Warlord a lot because juicing up those mega bosses and giving them an artifact and a mount trait each is pretty spicy, right? Sorry, my phone's ringing.
Hello.
I'm on a show.
Oops. Yeah. So Bloodtoofs is Gore Grunter battle line, and it's that double Maw Crusher actually, Owen, which is so powerful. Flaming weapons on a Mega Boss and Maw Crushers, very, very scary. And obviously that Amulet of Destiny with an article coming out soon about the Amulet of Destiny from Cabbage about its efficacy. 50% actually more damage required is kind of a headline. You think it's 33% more wounds, but it's 50% more damage. There's some sort of math there, which I still don't understand really. But yeah, Gore Grunters are super good. 15 wounds that can double move. So going 10 inches, moving 20 inches with that War Chanter buff being so powerful on them because they've got the 2 attack profiles. So that's +1 damage, not just to the Rider, but also the Grunter. So it's just a huge volume of damage, which works really well with smashing and bashing as well. So you can send the Gore Grunters forward if you want. You could throw in the 2 Maw Crushers that are moving. So it's wild, basically. It's a lot of damage going fast. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see different Lumineth lists because of Uruk War Clans, in my opinion.
Oh, really?
Well, so there hasn't been many lists. So one of the things that you tend to generally see with there's 2 lists, I would argue, if you don't agree, tell me. There are 2 versions of the Lumineth list, right? You've got Sevireth, the 2 Wind Spirits, the 30 Sentinels, in, I don't know, maybe in Zytrek, maybe in Helon. Like, I think it's more likely like them, and it could be in Sire as well. Or you have the 30 Sentinels and Techless, and then you have the Wardens, that kind of build, right? Either of them, it really focuses on them being a 1-drop or it being a very low drop and the ability to remove the damage that you see. Whereas the War Clans, I won't be surprised if we see them going to 1-drops because they can do it quite nicely. And with that double move that you get from Mighty Destroyers, just sticking literally everything into your opponent's face turn 1. And one of the problems with those Lumineth builds is they can't push out very well. They have a teleport, but that's about it. And also the damage coming out of the Maw Crushers, as well as, like, I don't know, 6 pigs buffed up, or, with smashing and bashing. I wouldn't be surprised if you see them, like, that Techlian build kind of fall away, because it's so aggro. Like, 2 Maw Crushers going 24 inches, one of them maybe going 36, 6 pigs going 20 inches. So if you wanted to, just from 1 Maw Crusher, you can have 2 6 pigs going 20 inches, the Maw Crusher going 24, and then all of it charging turn 1.
Yeah, and like, you would always in the past rely on Girding Arrogance to stop, your super fast Vordry or your Maw Crusher, but like you're right, because Goading Arrogance only from Sire, the trait, which is obnoxious. If anyone knows, you basically can't target the unit that you hit if there's the artifact holding or the trait holding character within 6 inches. So everyone puts all the techless players, they put the Techlian Castle up, they take the first turn, and they want you to charge them, and then you can unleash hell. And then if you're stupid and you've charged in Archeon or Nagash or some huge threat, then it just literally can't attack because it can't target anything but the Goading Arrogance hero. So you're right, though. You just send in 2 packs of pigs instead, and they're just going to blow up all the Wardens and maybe get into the Sentinels as well. Yeah, and it's fast and it's fun and it's quite easy to put on the table, isn't it? The Ironjawz build. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I mean, well, we've got some more tournaments we're covering in a bit, but it's going to come up a lot, I think. Double Maw Crusher is going to be, if you haven't got a way to deal with so we're going to see some screens. Are we going to see the Age of Screens coming back, Rob, because of the Maw Crushers?
Potentially. I think any army is actually going to really struggle against that. Truthfully, you got to ask yourself how you're going to screen out that amount of hurt and damage. And one of the really interesting things was with the general points uptick anyway in Age of Sigmar. Even your valuable units, like, I don't know, let's say Vindicators or Vindictors or whatever the hell they're called, like as your battle line, as your screen, I'm not sure that they'd necessarily survive against a big old fat Maw Crusher kicking their teeth in. So, like, there's a huge amount of hurt turn 1, and we've got to ask ourselves, what do I do to stop that? What do we do? And I think, yeah, and then smashing and bashing is the other combo as well. Thanks, Pro to Tabletop in the chat. It's massive. It's going to be so good. The age of the Uruk is upon us, Owen, and we must ask ourselves, how will the dragons kill them? It's just going to be...
With relative ease, Rob. I think with relative ease is the answer on that. I think we've all just got to make the most of the game before these bloody dragons come out. So let's have fun.
Yeah.
Yes. You're actually going to cheer me up. I was a bit down on the game, but now I've realised it's not going to be as bad as when the dragons arrive. So let's just get hyped.
Also, Owen, I don't know if you're interested in painting 7-pink horrors, but the Maw Crushers don't kill them. So just an FYI.
Yeah, I know. I'm not that guy. I'm not the 7-pink guy. I love you, Simon, but I'm not Simon Weekly.
He looked knackered this weekend. That was a lot of hard work, is all I'm going to say. Right, so, and you can do, they don't kill a Mega either, Colonel Cabbage. That's a good point. So, like, dragons, Maw Crushers, and Mega Gargants all just fighting out on the top tables, having a great time. Anyway, so that was, who was that in first place?
There were 3 finalists. That was Donnie Goerlitz.
Congratulations.
And then in second place, Brad College, schooling people. See what I did there?
Nice.
With his Bonesplitterz. Drakfoot Bonesplitterz, Rob.
Well, this is quite nice because I'm talking about them on the show tonight. Just to talk through the list, it was Drakfoot. He had a Weird Knob, a Prophet, a Wardock, another Wardock. Then he had 5 Savage Ball Boy Maniacs, 30 Arrow Boys, another 30 Arrow Boys. And then he had 10 Savage Uruks, 10 more Savage Uruks. And then he had 3 times 2 Big Stabbers, Vanguard and Warlord as well. So you got to feel like those Stabbers are playing really nicely into the monster meta and the save stacking meta anyway, right? Because of the rend and the damage.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm with Dave Fraser though. As there weren't 6 Prophets, I'm kind of out. I have to say, I'm not interested.
That's fair.
6 work. No, I'm being silly. 6 Wargogs is baller though. But yeah, I mean, I listened to a couple of podcasts, and there's a guy on one of the podcasts I listened to, and he swears by his 30 brick of Arrow Boys.
Yeah.
Because I think you could put a spell on them or do a dance or something, and they get exploding 6s. It's not as obnoxious as it used to be, but. So did you say that he had 2 blocks of 30 Arrow Boys? Yeah,
so, and thanks, Pete, for pointing it out. So Michigan GT allowed you to use either the old book or the new book. I
wish they'd have done it with the Sylvaneth book for like 9 months. I'd had a much better ranking score.
For 2 years.
I'm just going to play this one. Is that all right?
Can I use the old book? Like new points, but old book. Is that possible? So you let you choose either. So I think, so this isn't a current Drakfoot list. So maybe not not that it's not relevant, of course, but Stabbers have changed as well a lot into the new book. So
I mean, it's not as if Bonesplitterz were like incredible top tier filth that's now been taken down a peg or two in the new book. They were a kind of connoisseur's choice in the past anyway. So, and I think Drakfoot removes ward saves. Is that right?
Yes, removes ward saves. And those arrow boys are going to work really nicely into Gotrek. Not, as stated, as predicted by the show. I'd like to know that Gotrek's much of an issue competitively. Just like to point that out. As discussed on this show many a time.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd bring that up. Doesn't need comping, apparently. Does he?
No. I mean, he just tore through 4 Gargants, didn't he, at the weekend? But we'll come to that.
Yeah, he did. But like that's your fault for having 4 Gargants. Like, that's how it works.
And then another 5-0, Rob, a name that comes up a lot. I'm not sure all the different armies he plays, but Jake Leclerc, I think he's part of the US Worlds team. Is that right?
Yeah, and Jake's a fantastic person and gamer on the tabletop. Like really, really good. Plays it out with the Detroit boys, and he's got himself a Fuethan Idneth Deepkin list. So I just talked to you guys about that. So that is, he's got the Achillean King. He's got Lotan, he's got an Eidolon, and the Eidolon has got flaming weapons with the Arcane Tome, which is such a baller tip pick. That's really nice. Really, really nice. I'm making him very scary. Those, as Chris Welfare was saying on the show, those 3 10s of Namati Reavers, genuinely pretty nice. In like where they're pointed and also what they can do utility in game. They're kind of like Blitzbarb Archers, but a lot better. And then he's got 2 Alapexes, one with a net launcher, one with a harpoon. And then another Alapex. Oh no, he's got loads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Alapexes, all individual ones, and he's got all harpoons and then 1 net launcher. And the harpoon profile is fantastic, like really good, really good. We saw Forgive use it loads in the TTS era of Age of Sigmar 2. And we saw him wipe out Archeon just from the shooting alone from the Alapexes. They're a great dual-purpose unit. They shoot and fight well, those Alapexes. And even they were 110 points, they're 125 now. Fantastic.
Yeah, they're great. And he's got a cheeky Leviathan in there as well, Rob, just for good measure.
Cheeky Leviathan. That's what they're called, I think, when you pick one. Oh, you cheeky rogue.
I think they're great for battle tactics and stuff, though, right? Leviathans, just
amazing.
Yeah.
I would argue that, like, because that's the only source of a monster in Lumineth and not Lumineth, sorry, Idneth, and maybe one of the reasons we haven't seen them do very well. Like, actually, in fact, Owen, Twitch chat, let's find out. Right, I could do this right now for you guys. Let's go and see how, via our faction review page, how Idneth are doing in the current stats. Now, these aren't all of the results from Age of Sigmar 3 yet. That will be next week. But Idneth have got a 52% win rate, as you can see right there. They played 181 matches. And if we go into our next panel very quickly to talk about this, and if you listen to the podcast, you have to just believe. The most chosen subfaction is Fuethan, generally. You have a pretty high chance of doing very, very well with Idneth Deepkin. As you can see, they've won 2. They've got 2. They've gone 2 and 3, 30% of the time. 3 and 2, 38% of the time, and then 4+ win, 4-1, 16% of the time. They haven't 5-0'd yet. I don't think anywhere in the world, but they're generally pretty. They're doing okay. They're in that midfield, so very much dropped down from where they were previously. And it's probably arguable that some of the better performing factions are capping them a little bit and pushing them down. Because they probably lose into the Gargants, and they probably lose into, Zinch? Maybe? No, I don't think so. Not sure what they lose into, but something, because they're not right at the top. You got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, they did take a bit of a kicking in terms of, like, you can't spam Volturnus's command ability anymore. So the lowly Achillean King is getting his time to shine.
Oh, it's okay. I found out who they do badly into. Sons of Behemoth, they've only got a 42% win rate into those. They struggle a lot into Slaves to Darkness. They've only got a 17% win rate. I didn't know I could do that. That's great. That's fun. And Lumineth Realm Lords, Owen, they're doing okay into those, which surprised me.
I'm glad. I'm just laughing at Dave Fraser in the chat. We we're going to return to a bit of friend cast now. No, we don't need to deal with any of those hard stats. Or any of
I'll
that
stop
boring
that.
stuff.
Apologies.
Yeah. Bloody hell, Rob! What's wrong with you? You had a little wobble there. Put that thing that you've been working on for months away. All that interesting, actual data, and get back to the AOS Friends Centre.
Shout out to Rob, Ziggy, and the crew for doing that. But there we go.
My thoughts on Idoneth. I mean, it's nice that you're not just seeing the same units spammed all the time. I mean, when would you have seen 30 Reavers with Lotan and an Achillean King in AOS 2? So yeah, I think the fact that the Eels are only 4 wounds means that they don't get the extra. They don't count as 2 on objectives, and they are quite flimsy. But yeah, how many wounds has a shark got? Is it 8 wounds on a shark?
Oh, I'd love to use the app to find out, but let's say yes. Is it not 10?
No, I think it's 8 wounds on a shark.
Yeah. And
they don't bracket. They got a nice big base, so you can block things up. Thanks to the chat there, 8. It's cool. I mean, IDK aficionados will probably be able to pick apart that a bit more, but it's got quite a lot of shooting there, because Leviathan's got a good shooting attack as well, right?
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of range.
There's a lot more shooting in there than you would think, basically. And I think the ability to even just to clear screens before a charge is actually quite nice, because the fact that the whole army also flies really does, ignoring the Reavers and the Thralls, and Lotan, obviously. If only he flew, then we take him. Then he'd be in the lists.
I love Lotan as the general, because people are gonna, that's quite a good flex. They're definitely gonna not get Warlord because they don't really know what that model is. They probably think it's a bit of the scenery or something, because they've never ever seen it on the board before.
Lotan, how dare you? Thank you to Pedro Fantastico for subscribing. Storm Trait Models will be right. And also thank you to MJ Pegasus for donating £20 to the show. That's super nice of you, MJ Pegasus. I'd like you to know that's going directly on More Stats. Directly on More Stats.
Yes.
So that I think that's Michigan. We've done Michigan, the top 3 anyway.
Yeah, we've done the 5 and O's, and then there were, just to give people a sort of an overview of the 4 1s. So these players only dropped a game through the course of the 5 rounds. So I'll just rattle these off if you want, Rob, and then you can do some talking, because I feel I'm not really.
You're doing great. Can we all just get some love for Owen in the chat, who always feels like he's not doing great, but we all love having him here. So thank you.
So we've got another Deepkin army actually went 4-1. So that's John Anderson with I think I know John. I think he's played in some of my TTS events. Very good player, and a Deepkin player of note. So he went 4-1 with Fuethan, and then Roger Barker with Big War. Jeremy Tucker, I think that's our first ever Cruel Boys 4-1
It
there,
is.
Rob.
Cobra Kai never die, Jeremy. Jeremy's fantastic. Love him.
And that was an unsurprising Big Yellers Balti Boy army. Jack Coward with Hosts of the Everchosen, Sixth Circle. Evan Gannon with Tzeentch Eternal Conflagration. Another Tzeentch list, this time Host Arcanum by Cameron Swanson. And then Juan Noah Singh. He's a great player, by the way, Rob. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Another Ironjawz. I think he went 4-0. He only lost in his last round, and that was with a Bloodtoofs list. Emma Mangles with Emma Mangles with the Lumineth Realm Lords Helon list, and then Chuck Giardina with the Suns Breaker Tribe. Kyle Blasky with an OBR Petrifex.
You love that
list, and good lad, Kyle. Well done. And then Palmer Middlecalf with Stormcast, Celestial Warbringers. So that's all the 4 1s wrapped up there for you, Roblin.
Love that. And again, a lovely mix, right? Like a lovely mix.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real diversity across. I'm not, you're seeing a lot more destruction coming through, which is nice. Good for them,
I agree. I would also say that one of the things, not sleeper, but we don't talk about it enough. I've tried a lot. Recently, they went 5-0 at Facehammer, but they also early into Age of Sigmar 3 over in Australia when people could play. Definitely some early adopters that we saw quite a few. So pre the Facehammer result, we had Lone Star Open, and I think we also had another event in Australia. I'm sorry if I forget which one. It might have been the Toowoomba event. I'm not sure. Big shout out to my Toowoomba homies. They had Host the Ever Chosen 6 Circle, and again going 4-1, Jack Carwood. Yes, Archeon's phenomenal, but that extra damage in 6 Circle, I think is pretty telling going into a new Ironjawz meta. You know, those big heavy cavalry that we saw coming out of the Varangard are going to be very similar, I think, to Gore Grunters. And I think you're going to see more lists like that with big one-hits. And I think 6 Circle is really good, right?
Yeah, definitely, especially as, you know, you get that damage on the charge, and then if you use your second activation, you still get that extra damage pushing through, so you can really blow some stuff up. But yeah, you're right. That's an interesting comparison. I hadn't ever really thought about pigs to Varangard, but Gorgrunters got cheaper, right?
Gorgrunters did get cheaper, and arguably better. They got +1 to wound as well. They also do their mortals, instead of being 4s, is 3s. Their war scrolls really, really good. The only thing that I argue would impact them is the fact that they don't have 2-inch reach on any of their melee weapons. So the 6, so when you go from 3 to 6, you have a coherency issue, and you also have kind of like a maximum ability to hit. But there is a way to attack with everything, with all 6 at once. But you have to do a very weird formation. You might buy a movement tray that just does it. It kind of looks like a Mighty Ducks wedge, like a Bretonnian lance of old, a ham fist, maybe is what we could call it.
I'm into
yeah.
it. Yeah, ham wedge with additional piccalilli sauce.
Nice.
Okay, another tangent. Sorry, Rob.
I don't really know what piccalilli is.
It's like a yellow sort of. It's a condiment, very nice in a sandwich with ham, maybe with some cheese. Okay. It's got like chunks of something in it, which is kind of like cauliflower, maybe I want to say. It's almost got a slightly exotic vibe to it.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you mean the boiled potatoes I eat aren't very exotic? Just the boiled potatoes and the cauliflower that I eat every day isn't that exotic?
You want to piccalilli that shit up, mate. You'll have a wild time. You'll increase you'll be on the route to Flavortown in no time at all.
Apparently in the chat, I'm kind of disappointed it's a jam that Rob doesn't know. Is this when I lie to you? It could be. And also shout out to Swaggy Shadow Sword in the chat, who went 17 at the Michigan GT. And listen, if Jeremy was there, at the event, and also Jeff. I think Jeff might have been running the event. Jeff's wonderful. Then I'm sure it would have been phenomenal. Owen, we've only done one. We really need to fucking get a grip, kid.
I just want to shout out one person, which is Leo Crusher. That I'm not going to call it piccalilli anymore. I'm just going to call it white man chutney.
I don't think you want to say, "Hey, do you want some of my white man chutney?" Because I still think that doesn't sound right. But hey, no, got Matthew, one up. Right, okay. Mancunian Carnage, you're going to take us through this one, right? Because this is one of the other ones that use win-loss draw as opposed to a 20-0.
Yes, and the second largest event of the weekend, just a few less. It had 74 players. So this was in Stockport at Element, just outside of Manchester. So very Seraphon heavy on the meta here. We had 12 Seraphon armies, Rob. And I think it does throw up something we'll cover in a second, which is, I don't think we've seen many Seraphon 5.0s, have we, Rob? I think they could be one of those quintessential 4-1 armies, but we'll come back to that. So 12 Seraphon, 8 Stormcast. So people love getting their, I would say people love getting their old toys out, but I think it's mainly new toys that they bought. So yeah, there were 8 Stormcast, 7 Ironjawz, another 6 Soulblight, 5 Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and 4 Lumineth armies. So yeah, a pretty strong field. With its proximity to Liverpool, you get the Just Play guys going there. There's a big local community. So yeah, lots of very recognisable UK players there. So a pretty sharp, tanky top 10. But coming in with a very unique Stormcast army, one of the only two 5-0s. Tom Mawdsley, who's obviously part of the England setup. Yeah, he had a Stormcast list. Rob, have you seen this?
So I've tried to see it, but I'm showing for visual evidence for everyone at home how the list was submitted on TTO. Tom has maybe had a broken keyboard. I'm not sure what's going on, but I just decided not to read the list when I saw it. I was like, no, I'm not reading it. Like, I don't know if you've seen how it's formatted on TTO. But
he's brilliant at he's brilliant at Warhammer, but that list submission is not something to be heralded, is it?
I think I'd prefer a picture.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a big claim. I think I know what the list is, and I think a lot of people will have seen it anyway, but he's got 5 of the new bow boys, right?
Yes.
5 of the new Knight Judicators, which are pretty scary. 2 shots apiece, 2s and 3s. Or 3s and 2s, Ren 3 damage, and then once per game they do that big blow up aura thing. And then there's also a prime in there and a load of chaff, golden liberated chaff. It's kind of like one of those scalpel lists, Rob. I know it would play very differently, but a bit like the Foxes.
Yep.
You've got these small amount of very high quality shots. And then a small army, but it's not as if he had like 30 Sentinels to back it up or anything. So, and he beat a very competent Legion of the First Prince list in the round 5. It takes out the synergy though, doesn't it? It's like you can pick out all the heroes. I just don't know. He must have played out of his skin, right? Because it's a pretty impressive 5-0 with that.
So one of the things that's in there actually was really interesting is Celestine Prime, right? We saw that actually in Andy Hughes' list, who took out Bobo at the weekend, and we saw Andy. Sure. So we saw Andy just use the Celestine Prime actually as a mortal wound generating kind of like. You pinpoint a unit in the ground, point in the ground, and everything inside of it takes AoE damage. And you just kind of used it as like a mortar, basically, a mortal wound mortar over the course of the weekend. And that probably would have very much helped as well. There's also an allied in Hurricane, Spirit of the Wind, which is kind of like a Shackles, but better, because you still, on its War Scroll, get to do the retreat and charge. So there would have been some nice move blocking in addition to that. So so you can take out all the synergy, do all the shooting as you discussed, and also has got the ability to do that additional chip damage from the Celestine Prime, who's also pretty nice in a fight, and the Hurricane Spirit of the Wind as the ally is also going to be good for adding to that chip damage and also move blocking. So a lot of options there, but specifically I think very likely to achieve battle tactics first. And then the primary maybe would have been a following on consideration. I'm not certain, but you wouldn't have many characters after turn 2 left against this list, right?
No, and you're right. Like Killer Battle Line, he's got multiple ways of just picking off, that screen, and but you're right. I think it might struggle on the primary because it's not many bodies whatsoever. I'd like to go back maybe and have a look at all the lists that he played against, but he obviously would have been thinking that it can beat Sons of Bahamut because they're a very popular army. But, I mean, even if he hits some wounds with everything, it's not a huge amount of damage, is it?
No, but I'm not necessarily certain you have to do a huge amount of damage. Apart from if you go into Gargants. There aren't many people running DPS checks lists. Ultimately, we're generally tending to see a fairly elite meta. Like Varangard would be a good example. Eels even are a good example, although you don't tend to see them loads. In fact, actually, is it time to press the stats button one more time? I've done it. And let's go and look at this just for a quick moment. And let's look at participants. Steady on, I know. Sons of Bahamut, most popular army. Soulblight, Gravelords, and Seraphon. Seraphon generally not running big skink clouds anymore, and instead Salamanders, even Bastiladons play quite nicely into those. Not that he did. Lumineth Realm Lords have got some pretty elite units as well, either the Foxes or the Wardens. Take those out. and that's quite nice. Soulblight Gravelords are up there as well, and normally we're seeing a Vengori Lord, Nagash as well. We're seeing, we tend to see that a lot. There are a few. There aren't many zombie horde lists that I've seen do well or play much. and also the Radikar list with Belladama, which would be sweet, but that would just die, which would suck to all the shooting. So it's playing quite nicely into what the meta is, I would argue, other than Gargants. Not sure what it does against Gargants. Maybe just move blocks it. Not sure.
Yeah, you're right. Like those Knight Judicators, they do get 2 Griffhounds free with each one, don't they? So he's actually got lots of like little MSU bits and bobs to just block up the board, and then he's going to be able to unleash hell. And then prime time, yeah, interesting. A very interesting take, though, right? I mean,
I agree. And also, Tom's a fantastic gamer. Does really well, constantly at loads of different events. Can't argue with his ability to perform. So excellent work there, Tom. So he went 5-0, and we also got another 5-0?
Yes. And another gamer who always does really well is James Tinsdale. So one of the Just Play guys. And he took a Nagash list. One of his club mates as well, who went 4-1, we'll cover in a minute. He took exactly the same list. So it's not the
Rowhammer situation. I love that.
Yeah. So it's not the Manfred and Vengorian Lord list that you often see. It's kind of a hybrid between that and talking about what Tom has run in recent events. Tom was running like Vordry and loads of Blood Knights, like 5. I think you saw Christian Moore at the weekend with a similar. Actually, yeah, it's the same list as what Christian ran at the weekend, pretty much. So James took Nagash, a White King on Skeletal Steed, and I believe it's 4x5 Blood Knights and then 20 zombies. And yeah, obviously you watched Christian play that. It's pretty. There were a lot of wounds to get through those Blood Knights, right? I've underestimated them. There were 3 at base, I believe. They're fast. They dominate the board.
Yeah, very, very competent. And they do some good damage on the charge, and especially in Castelli, they're very, very good. I'm just trying to get out the Legion. I'm just trying to get the stats for these guys, actually, because I think one of the interesting things to talk about is which the most popular faction is. So sub-faction, and it's far and away Castelli. So 151 times we've seen Castelli be the sub-faction of choice versus Legion of Night be 80. So it's almost the most popular by 100%, or that's not maths. Hey, YouTube thug who's about to complain about me not saying that right. Fuck
Somebody
you.
Furious
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
that's not what that means.
Hear it this time.
But they've got a flat win rate of 50%. Like they got a flat win rate of 50%, and the Castelli dynasty is actually sat at 50%, with Legion Knight the second most chosen. One of the worst performers, with Vyrkos, my favourite, the worst performer of all, 40%. Third most popular subfaction chosen, worst performing subfaction by 10%. Versus the top one, which is Castelli. So I think it seems to be the most chosen one with that Blood Knights. And I did say when we did the review of Soulblights, you're either going to go for the high armor save value of the Castelli builds and the Blood Knights and your Vengori Lords and whatever, or we're going to go for these hordes. And I think actually the build meta, the opportunity to just build. It's not many models, right? Like if we look at the list, like it's not tons. What's he got? He's got.
It's literally the White King on Skeletal Steed makes the Blood Knights battle line. And then, it's Nagash, a White King, 4x5, and then 20 Dark Walker zombies.
Exactly. Like, it's not a lot of models to paint up. Like, it's quite nice. And Nagash is just, you've been using Nagash, phenomenal, right?
Yeah. I can't imagine what it'd be like when with that lore. The spell lore is really good. I think as a single model he's better in OBR, but with the supporting cast he's better in Soulblight Gravelords. But yeah, spamming, I mean, it's pretty smooth brain, but spamming 8 arcane bolts is pretty horrible. You can charge, blow something up on the charge, and then pile into something more important, and then debuff the hell out of your opponent's army. Even stuff like you don't see it a huge amount, but 8 arcane bolts at 12-inch range, just to go 5 over there to kill that little hero. That gets me Warlord. 2 over there to clear the screen so that other unit can pile in there, and I'll keep a few in the bank. I mean, my favourite Nagash trick, Rob, is into Marathi. So you charge little Marathi on your turn, and you do 3 damage, and you keep an arcane bolt or 2 back, and then as soon as your opponent gets their turn, at the start of the hero phase, you release more arcane bolts, and then you do another 3 damage to Marathi, and sometimes that can just kill her.
Nice.
So there's all, because the bolts last till your next hero phase, there's so many little techie opportunities.
I think also what's really nice is you've cast them previously, so it's not like, oh, I hope I can do 7 arcane bolts, and with Nagash most likely, but like you have 4. You know you have 5.
Yeah.
So like, does that model have a ward save? No. Cool. 5 mortal wounds directly at, like you said, 12 inches. Like, it's a guarantee, and like we've talked about before, the guarantee makes your list so much stronger, right? Yeah. Just, I've got some notes about the game overall that I was writing up earlier, and it's just like efficiency and reliability, and outside of a miscast, which comes up, Nagash is a battle tactic. He eats those battle tactics up, especially in the late game, clearing stuff off. You saw in my game against Adam at Blood Tithe, he can just wind up. So anyway, yeah. So, and James's list will do very much the same. You've got Nagash left in the late game, coming to party, clearing up. So yeah, that was the 2 5-0s. So James and Tom, both part of the England setup. And then in the rest of the 4-1s, another 2 players who have historically been in the England team. And James is also a great player, right? Like he's had excellent results all across all of Age of Sigmar 2, which I think is when he predominantly came to the forefront and has just continued to perform well.
Yeah. I mean, he is still the current sort of Warhammer World Champion. He won that final 2 years ago, so. And he picked me to best OBR at Facehammer, so he moves around armies and always does well. So, you know what they say, Rob, the cream always rises to the top, right? Regardless of the list. So yeah, another 2 players in and around the England scene. So Richie McCallie dropping his Lumineth and taking Iron Sun's Ironjawz to a 4-1. And then Russ from Facehammer, Russ Veal, again with an Ironjawz, Iron Sun's list going 4-1. Outside of that, we had a couple of the Bucks guys did really well. Seraphon, so Darren Styles with another 4-1. I think he follows up. He did 4-1 at his Draco Tail summoning engine list, Croak and a Slan and a minimum battle line and some sallies. And then Mike Stewart from Bucks with a Thunder Lizard. And there were actually another 2 Thunder Lizard lists in Andy Bryan and Paul Bowden, who went 4-1. And then rounding it out, Tom Blacksall, one of the Dragon Slayers. I think he played at the Super Series. He got a good 4-1.
Such a nice guy. Such a nice guy.
Lovely guy. And he's got a gorgeous army. I think it's like Idneth Deepkin mixed with Ogres. And he got a 4-1 with Boulderhead Ogres. Kieran Alexander from the Angel team. He did well at Blood Tithe and he got a 4-1. He was playing on table 5, actually. He lost Tom with Legion of the First Prince. An OBR, Petrifex Nagash, James Harrison, he went 4-1. I think that might be the best list, actually, what he ran, which is Nagash and Arcan together with 40 Mortek, Portal, and Burning Head. Might see me play that one in the future, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's solid. 11 Arcane Bolts is better than 8, though, right, Rob? To take down a Gungan.
Agreed. That works nicely.
And then, as I mentioned, Joe Grzinski with Nagash, Castelli, Soulblight, and then JP Stevens. Never really see him do worse than a 4-1, maybe a 3-2 every now and again. But again, with that Helon Nation Lumineth Triple Fox build, he got a 4-1 there as well. So, yeah, lots of recognisable names on the UK scene. They're all doing well.
Well, and one who isn't, Kieran, and I think it's worth talking about. Kieran on the UK scene, playing a lot, but most importantly, doing really well with Legion of the First Prince. Actually, not to do it again, but I'm doing it to go to the stats. Legion of the
doing to us?
I know, but Legion of the First Prince have a 58% win rate, Owen. They're one of the most successful factions, right? Which is really
surprise me.
Doesn't surprise me either. But one of the really interesting things is the conversion rate, Owen. Yeah, because actually, if we look at the meta rates, let me just go and look at the meta representation. Legion of Chaos Ascendant, which is all Legion of the First Prince now at this point, is like it's the not very popular. It's 1.7% of the meta. It's a bit of a Daughters of Cain in AOS 2 situation where it's super unpopular or it's not used a lot. Because it's an amalgamation of a bunch of different armies, right? Normally you see Kairos, normally you see Be'lakor, normally you see a Khorne Demon Prince. Like, it's a bunch of stuff stuck together. Sometimes it's Plague Bearers, sometimes it's Demonettes, sometimes it's Pink Horrors. There's a bunch of different stuff, but it's not played a lot. But it's got one of the biggest win rates, which is kind of one of those interesting conversations. It's kind of, if you've been playing Age of Sigmar a lot, you know about all these kind of... It's almost like, oh, where the fuck even is that book? It's like, it's not a book. You can't just go and buy it. It's not just a battle tome. So it's a real gamer's choice army, Kieran playing it, and being less than 2% of the meta, but being a 58% win rate, being one of the most successful armies is actually a really interesting bit of information, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. Great in teams. Often got Be'lakor in there, being a bit of a prick. So yeah, I really like it, and I like you always go for the control, like what you've described. So Pinks, Demon Prince, Kairos, Be'lakor, and then the Flavor Town element of it is where you get your damage from. Some people go Boomthirster, but I really like Contorted Epitome with the 4-fold blade. So 9 attacks, 5s do D3 mortal wounds. She's fun, she's fast, or it. I'm not sure if it's a she. I always think of it as a she. But yeah, the epitome in there. And you're right, it does feel like a... But it's super strong, right? I mean, let's have 10 Demonettes or 10 Bloodletters or something at the end of the hero phase, or 5 Pinks. Sorry, at the end of the movement phase on a 10 on 3d6.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. Like, and again, it's got like a double shutdown, right? It's got Kairos. It's also got like a Fight on Death spell, which is really good. There's a lot of tools in Legion of the First Prince. A lot of tools, and I think it's interesting. And I think, as Mandolese has said, you need to take into account that only seasoned players or players with probably more game knowledge will take this army, artificially increasing the win rate. It's almost as if it's kind of like the choice of the pros, is what I'm going to say. And Kieran, going 4-1 with it, should be really proud of himself. Excellent work, Kieran. A round of applause to you, good sir, and fine man. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. So that was Mancunian Carnage this weekend?
It was Mancunian Carnage Resurgence. Yes.
Okay.
So that was that. Do you want to take us away to the wonderful land of Sweden?
Well, I'll go to Bobo first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because I think that's one of those really interesting... I'm juggling between like 4 different screens at the moment, so let me just make sure I've got this right. Bobo was organised thusly. You wrote your list, you brought it on the day, and you could just write it down on a piece of paper, leading to what I can describe as some of the sweetest list inputs that I've ever had. And I was just being given bits of handwritten lists which I loved and or hated. So I don't have some of those lists available, and some of it will be off the top of my head. But taking out the event, and most importantly as a headline, no one went 5-0. Right? So no one went 5-0 at the event. But this was an event where they were using the differential as the primary, which is pretty interesting. So Andy Hughes, who came first, congratulations, with his Thunder Lizard, not his Thunder Lizard list, sorry, his Dracothian's Tail Lizards list, got 81 victory points against Benjamin Sava, with his Munificent Wanderers Nurgle list, who only got 80, as well as Dan Arnold. What a legend. Love Dan Arnold, the Mormon himself. Yeah, he got Deepkin. His Deepkin also got an 80, so it was joint second as well. But they 1 point between first and second and third, who were basically joint second. And I think that's kind of quite interesting, that granularity, because actually as some of those games started to play out, and it was thanks to a really big win against Dan Bradshaw in 7th place on the final battle plan, which probably the differential scoring system doesn't really work for, that Dan Arnold was able to get so high. So Ben was running Munificent Wanderers, and he was running a list that we saw play at Bloodtithe. And if you go and search for his list on Bloodtithe, you'll be able to find it there. Andy's list was 5 Salamanders, 2 2s, 1 1, the Celestine Prime, and a Bastillodon, in Draco's Tale with some skinks, and then he had the Starseer, the Slan. But the big conversation was probably the introduction of the Celestine Prime, very much like you saw in Tom Mawdsley's list, actually, in the and he was always down from turn 1 and just doing consistent mortal wound output. And when you double that up with the Realm Shaper's ability to explode pieces of terrain and Rain of Stars from a Slan, you've basically got 3 almost global mortal wound bomb smells abilities every turn, which is pretty fantastic for taking out support characters, which actually seems to be the conversation of Age of Sigmar 3. It's something I wanted to kind of get to towards the end, that shoot the heroes being a meme has become the game. Right, Lumineth Realm Lords, they shoot all your characters. Seraphon, they raid stars on all your characters. Even the Gargants throw rocks at all your little support characters. And I think that's really, just like Nagash, Arcane Bolt.
It's completely suboptimal, but I've got 3 Mortek Crawlers right here, baby.
Killing your characters. It's become like a quite funny story where something we were talking about years ago as a meme might actually be kind of the inherently seen thing that's happening. And then Dan Arnold was running Gotrek in Fuethan, I'm pretty certain, with a bunch of eels. He also had a turtle. And Gotrek doing some really solid work from there. Simon Weekly in 4th. So all of these went 4-1. Disciples of Tzeentch, and that was the 70 horror list. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. I don't think much needs to be said. He had 30, 20, 2 10s of pink horrors in hosted blisters, so you can't run away from them. He had a Lord of Change with +1 to his save rolls, thanks to either command trait or artifact, and reroll casts, and then the bridge. Couldn't be leaner. The guy worked so hard this weekend rolling dice, like phenomenal. Very funny point where I saw Andy just refusing to help him roll dice. He's like, "You brought the list, mate. You roll the dice," and then proceeded to help him. But a great result there. Chris Myhill with his Cities of Sigmar. And then Matt Goldsborough with his Lumineth again, and Dab Branshaw in 7th with his Giants. And I don't know if that's where it ended. I think Adam Mumford with Daughters of Cain went 4-1 as well. So Adam Mumford from the coverage with me. Although one of those games against Christian Moore, I think he should have forfeited the points ultimately because he had to do a lot of tequila shots, and Christian babysat him through this game. But Christian basically tabled himself with Adam's army while Adam was too drunk.
Nice.
I'm not sure it's very pro.
I think some tequila 20-owed Adam's liver for round 2.
Yeah.
Story there.
And also a big shout out to Matt Davis, so Matt Mallow with his Lumineth list in 11th, who I think he went 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. But it was with just a terrible Lumineth list. He had Stone Guard, he had Avlanor. It was awful. And we saw him get turn 1 tabled basically by.
You're so rude. You got that commission painted by one of the UK's top painters,
and it won an award for being painted beautifully. And he should be congratulated on pushing a terrible list to 3-1-1. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it shouldn't do that well. He's done really well. Well done.
There you go. He won 4-1.
Fine. He went 4-1 with a terrible list, which is even better. That's not rude. That's like. It's not rude, is it? That's actually a compliment. It's not my fault the list is terrible.
It's a bit like saying you look great today because you looked shit yesterday.
No, it's not.
It's like a bit.
No, it's not. It's like saying you look great today despite the clothes you're wearing. That's what it's like saying.
Well, that's another really good. It looked like on those top tables. It's like even though it wasn't a huge field, it looked like a kind of bit of an invitational kind of vibe almost. You know, where you had lots and lots of top players with top lists just slugging it out against each other over 5 rounds. So I can understand why Adam decided to get, paralytic on the Saturday. It might have forced me to drink having all those lists knocking around.
Yeah. But Bobo was excellent. And I think one of the interesting things is, again, that scoring system. That's the thing to kind of take away from this at the weekend, because actually when you look at how close that is, you start to have some real conversations about, like, oh, what do we think's going on here and there. So I really like that. So that was Bobo. And then not going 4-0. So thankfully no one went 5-0 because Andy Hughes is unable to go 5-0. So that's how he was able to win the event, getting his 4-1 because he's the king of the 4-1s. And thankfully no one else going 5-0 didn't pick him to the top, which was quite fun. Right, so then finally is... where is it? It's Fantasia Fanatic. So that's 40 players, and this was Umea, the east coast of Bothnia in Sweden, which doesn't let people like me in. As you said, Owen, Ogre's the most popular army, Soulblight in fourth, so Owen did this. No one went 5-0, and again they used the scoring system, and I'm going to try and get this on the screen for you guys very quickly. So you can see the scoring system here. So give me a second so you guys can look at this. And I'll include all these in the show notes. So actually, oh god, there's so much data doing this. It's so much. So no one went 5-0, right? Oh no, someone did go 5-0. Sorry. No, someone went 4.5. Sorry. So
yeah, 4 wins. That was Joel Kornfield. So 4 wins, 1 draw.
Yeah. Joel Kornfield with his Soulblight list went 4.5. But if you actually look, this is what's really interesting. So because of the scoring system, which you guys can see on the screen, so I'll read it out for you guys. Alex Herbeck with his Stormcast Eternals came first. Now he lost his first game, but he only lost his first game as an 11-9. So it was a very, very close loss. And then game 2, 20-0. Game 3, 20-0. Game 4, 19-1. And then game 5, 14-6. So that's how he ended up getting 82 points, just pipping out Percy Galavus, who also had Stormcast Eternals, so a double Stormcast, which taking into account Tom's list as well. So a lot of Stormcast doing very well very early, right? And he won his first game, 17-3, and then he lost his second game, 11-9. And then he 20-0'd, 19-1'd, and 15-5'd. And I think that's the really interesting conversation looking at the brackets, is that both losses, if you count them as losses, were very, very close, where everything was a dominant win, versus where is it Joel? Yeah, Joel. So Joel won 11-9 game 1, 12-8 game 2, 19-1. Oh no, it's not Joel, is it? Sorry, no, it is Joel. Sorry, Joel. Sorry, he won 11-9, 13-7, 18-2, 11-9, and then a draw. So if you think about it, like 3 of his games were close to, if not effectively, draws on the points. So absolutely, Joel got 4 wins and 1 draw, which is better than 4 wins and a loss in kind of an older scoring system. But if you look at them, 3 of those 5 games were actually super close, with Alex, who ended up coming first, with 3 of his games being very dominant. And I guess how do we score that? How do we discuss that? Like, what do we think about that? Because Alex basically performed better in 3 out of 5 games. And performed better is scored more is the better way of describing it. With Joel actually doing, like, having closer and tighter games. What do you think, Owen? It's interesting. Chat, what do you think on that sort of scoring system?
I think it's really difficult because when you're talking through it then, you don't choose your matchups. And whilst you're always going to be playing against somebody who's won their last game or has a similar record to you, you might just get a really, really favourable draw. And that's where your big 20-0 comes from. Whereas, Joel, who got his 4 wins and a draw, he could have been scrapping in really difficult matchups and just pipping, and that's more. You would give that person more props based on that than the next guy who had a really simple matchup and just shot his opponent off, and that's where his 20-0 came from. So I think that maybe settling on this being the differential in singles, rather than being as clear cut as this, might be the way to go in the future. I don't know. I'm sure Joel feels probably a bit cheesed off that he had the best overall record in terms of wins and losses, but still, and then came in is it 7th?
Seventh.
Or 6th? 7th, yeah.
Mm.
But we're at the start of an edition, Robin. We're trying things, aren't we? So, let's try things.
And I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough, and Pro to Tabletop is bringing it up right now, is you don't, when you lose, when it's win, loss, draw. Listen, I think probably the best system is win, loss, draw, and then secondary is differential. I think that's probably the best system. But when you're losing, and I explained it at the beginning of Bobo actually, because the TOs had me come up and explain it to the audience. I was like, when you lose in a win, loss, draw, you just lose. It's basically 0 points. You're just like, oh, I got 0. Okay, whatever. But in a differential system, actually, 3 points is 3 points. You're like, how many did you get? I got 3 points. You're like, oh, nice. Like, oh, I got 8 points. 8 points sounds like a lot. I got 8 points in that game. You're like, that's pretty cool. Like, I think that there's something there. I don't think it's probably the right system to use as the primary, although we've got more events with it coming up, and I'd be very excited to see how the field feels. But for the top end, maybe it doesn't help them, but the top end is always like a very small percentage of the field. Actually, you really want to ask yourself, how does everyone else feel? Like, how does everyone else feel? Holding a top player or a top faction to, like, a marginal win, so they only end up getting, let's say, even something like a 13-7. Like, when you get 7 points out of a loss, you got to feel pretty great. Like, you did really well to score that many points, right? I don't know, like, because it's not the same scoring as we had in Age of Sigmar 2. Age of Sigmar 2 scoring was you win or you lose. Like, oh, you did well on the metagame, you did well on the kind of the strategy of the whole battle plan to make sure you pipped that point in the final turn, or you flooded them turn 1, made it so they couldn't score any points, and you dominated the early game, so there you go, you get the win, off you go. But we score differently in Age of Sigmar 3. And I think actually for players at the bottom to think that they're always in it, that big 20-point turnaround is pretty important. Actually, watching it live was really interesting, because going on the Sunday, especially at Bobo, which is the one I can talk about with most experience, watching the players be like, oh, okay, I'm playing this game, right? I won, but it was 11 points. Was really interesting because they knew that wasn't enough. They knew that wasn't a high enough score to push them in towards those top brackets. And that was actually really interesting because it didn't become like it was down to 4 players or 2 players by the final round. There was about 8 to 10, maybe like 16 or so people, maybe 12 people, who all had a shot to get into the top bracket. And that's pretty nice. It's pretty interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I think I really do like your point as well, Rob, about the losers. Because imagine if you're quite new to the game and you start going to tournaments and you know, everybody does it. Unless you're some savant who's amazing at the game, you're going to lose a lot of games. And there isn't really any way to quantify your progress in a 20-0 system. You're just, okay, I lost. I got 0 points. Whereas if you go to a tournament and you pick up a couple of points here and there, and then the next tournament you'll go in 15-5 or 14-6 or 13-7.
It's more granular in your own performance.
Yeah, you're able to quantify how your improvements, and then also you flip that on its head in terms of you start getting those wins. There is a nice way of sort of turning that round. I like that side of it in that way. Otherwise, it's just like, major loss, another major loss. You know what I mean? Whereas,
and again, it's about feelings, right? Like because ultimately it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. Actually, like as a system, like I feel out of my depth. So I think it's very brave of both the War in the Heartlands guys, the Fantasia organizers, the Bobo organizers to put that up as a system. Yeah. Now, is it perfect? Do I think it's the right system? Probably at this point, I'm not convinced. But I think it's really worth having a conversation as a community. And I think it's really healthy to kind of walk away from that and be like, how does everyone feel? Because I think that's good. Like, because if we just be like, cool, this is the system that we've got, we end up playing on green boards with no terrain for 10 years in a school hall. Yeah. And that's a terrible system. Like, our community should be trying to strive and push ourselves forward, right? That's what it should be doing. That's why I think we should nerf Gargants. No, I'm joking. But also, I'm not.
A couple of minor points on Fantasia, if it's all right,
Please,
Rob.
I'd love to hear them.
My client keeps calling me, but I don't care. I've got nowhere better to be, so we can ramble on for a little bit longer if you like.
Please do. I'd love to.
But I don't want. I know you've probably got things to do.
Oh no, I would
but
like
I'm
to
just
know.
saying.
As long as you've got is as long as I've got today.
Sweet. I just thought it might be, with the idea of the green tide over in America, and then, now we've got Tom doing really well with his Stormcast and these two Stormcast lists. We could be looking more at a golden tide rather than a green tide. And with that in mind, when I was looking at the results yesterday, a couple of the guys in the South London Legion chat were like, "Oh, can you put the list in?" And when I posted this list in the chat, which is Per Sigvalius, who went 4-1 in Sweden, they were like, "You're going to see this a lot." So I thought it might be good for the viewers to see this list as well, or to hear this list.
It's on the screen.
Okay, so we've got a Lord Relictor, who's the general, who's the high priest. He has Mirror Shield and Translocation. So that means that the Mirror Shield is that amazing artifact where he can't be targeted outside of 9 inches in the shooting phase. So we're talking about, shoot the heroes. It's like, good luck shooting this fella. And then he can translocate, so you can hero phase teleport on a 2+, which is kind of nice. Hallowed Knight, so Gardas Steel Soul. I played a nice game against Simon the other day with a Gardas list, so I kind of have a bit of an idea of what this does. So he's got the 12-inch bubble of a 5-up ward around him. So a bit like Teclis, but you don't need to cast a spell. And then a Lord Arcanum on Toralon. Now I don't know everything that this guy does, but Matt Goldsborough was very excited about the Toralon. He was down at Bad Moon trying to pick one up. And he always jumps on the filth. So if he was after a Toralon, then there's something in there with the Toralon.
And they're cheap. They're cheap 285 points. Like for a double caster is really excellent. And then he's also got the Cycle of the Storm. So it's not super useful, but the moment in that clutch moment where you bring a model back, or you basically make it so it doesn't die from the Cycle of the Storm, is also very nice.
Yeah, here we go. It's Thundergore in the chat, is obviously a Stormcast fan. He's saying that's right. Basically, when the Lord on Toralon finishes a move, it gives everything within 3 inches +1 to hit. So pretty spicy. And he's a flying wizard, so you can get places. So Celestial Blades is the spell, which is +1 to wound, I believe. And then 3x5 Vindicators, 3 Aether Wings, 4 Dracothian Guard Fulminators, and 6 Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows. And he has the Holy Command.
Fucking hate that. It's like a full chicken fillet. It's like they're like, "Oh, we'll give a once per battle you can shoot a unit twice command ability," and everyone's like, "I reckon I'm going to take 6 of these guys and I'm going to do this one time." And it's just fucking it's cool. Fine, but that's what I mean about unless new Stormcast rules come out, you will see that. Unless the points become too inefficient for the long strikes, you just see that just plugged and played into lists. It's like, I'm going to do that one time, off I go. And the book doesn't allow for much creativity beyond that, because it just is that, basically.
Yeah. I think Hallowed Knights looks really strong. And I think we're going to see Fulminators for a while until Dragons come out. And even when Dragons come out, we might still see Fulminators, but they got a massive uplift. So, it's not many models, is it? 15, 25, 28. It's 31 models. But obviously, Per did really well with that. And I think, as I say, from the chats I'm in, they were very vocal about that. That's the kind of list that you're going to see coming out of that Stormcast book for the next few months.
Well, those Draco Guard as well are phenomenal, right? So a unit of 4 is 460. They're 230 points each. 230 for a unit of 2. 12 wounds apiece, but on a 3-up base save, and on the charge, damage 3 from those lances, which is just outrageous. They also got mortal wound shooting as well. I would say the Fulminators are aggressively pointed for what they're able to achieve. They work really well with a Mystic Shield, being on a base 3-up. Cycle of the Storm really works well until it gets FAQ'd into them. they're very strong, especially when you can just blow stuff up with on that turn one. Shoot those raptors twice as well. So you've got some real output in the list, and then you've got like 3-5 Vindicators stood on objectives just being Vindicators.
Yeah, shielding Gardas, who's just hero slammed down onto the ground and giving out a nice fun. Isn't it cool that nice model's got some cool rules though, Rob? I think that model it's a bit Marvel Crisis Protocol, but I really do like
Gardas.
Yeah,
it's a bit Deadpool heroic landing scene.
Yeah, but hey,
whatever.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, I know. Like, and the Relictor in there as well, and it's nice to see the Taurolon actually see some play. We've rarely seen much of it. In fact, probably one of the few people I've ever seen run it would be Chris Myhill, like ever. It's
was he running the weekend?
I don't think he was running at the weekend. No, I think he was running cities, so it wasn't in there at the moment. But it's really good. But yeah, I would expect to see some FAQ because it's Thundercore is saying in the chat. There's some poor there are some very strong interpretations of how some of the rules inside the Stormcast book currently work, and it would be nice to get them FAQ'd. If they work that way, that's so good. Big thumbs. But until then, it feels like there's some good answers that could come from Games Workshop to see how they work, because you might basically have an immortal unit, effectively. Or it can ignore damage to a significant degree, which is quite nice. But let's get that FAQ'd, because if it's true...
I was just going to say, nothing's allowed to be immortal unless it's Nagash, surely.
Hey, you never had Protection Nagash in OBR FAQ'd, and you know you're gloriously happy about that. Like, everyone just forgot. Everyone... By the way, I can move after I teleport. You're like, well, that's weird. It doesn't seem to work that. Don't talk about it. Never talk about it. Like,
yeah. And everyone's talking about my destroyers and all those teleports and moves. It's like, just stop talking now.
Stop, never talk about. Everyone in the OBR chat just never speaks about it. They're like, someone says, by the way, can you teleport? And then someone DMs them. They're like, shut up. Yeah, you can, but don't say anything.
Don't say the word. Just to finish off Fantasia Fanatic, we haven't quite finished all the 4-1s. So Alexis Herbeck, I think this is actually what ended up being the winning list. That was a Stormcast Knights Excelsior list, Rob.
Excellent.
And then Per Sigvalius with the Hallowed Knights list we had a look at. Johan Deerlind with a host of the ever-chosen Tora Meyer with Daughters of Cain, a Calibron list. And then, as we've talked about, Joel with his Soulblight Vyrkos Dynasty was the 4 wins and a draw.
Yeah, congratulations to all those. A great event that I'm hoping to go to next year, basically. It's going to be really fun. And again, really cool to see them use a different scoring system. Owen, just before we head out, I kind of wanted to get some final thoughts from you, and I wondered if you wanted to look at wanted to get an update on the overall stats as we have them so far.
Yes. Shall we rattle off upcoming events and then go to that?
Sure, please.
So upcoming events, this weekend there's the London Open run by Colonel Cabbage. So that's about 30 to 40 players at the moment. I think there's more tickets if people want to come down to London and play some Warhammer. So that's this weekend, the 16th, 17th. Then there's a big weekend, 23rd, 24th, Rob. So obviously you're covering War in the Heartlands in Leicester. And this is on the 23rd, 24th. But there's also the Generals War GT out in Warsaw in Poland. So that's over 100 players. So obviously I saw Piotr had tweeted about that. I think there's all the lists are online as well if people wanted to search for those on Tabletop TO. There's some really good lists there. And then there's a couple of events in Canada. Lots of Canadian events, actually. There's one on Vancouver Island called Kipper's Melee. And then a big one over in Toronto, which is the
Red Harvest GT
guys. Yeah, the Red Harvest. So Jordan and Ridge and all those guys, plus their associated community. I think they're over 50 players already, and there's tickets for that. And then a final shout out for TTS, because I know some people are still locked up or they don't have a big community. One of the players that sort of took over the mantle and has been doing a lot was Trogdor, who we watched play Seraphon in Hammer Time. He has a tournament called Re-Release the Beast. The winter is coming. He's got space for 200 people online, Rob. 200 people TTS, and he's up to about 50
Wow.
at the moment. So I'm just going to put the link there. He specifically says in the description that all players of all sort of levels are welcome, and I think it kicks off mid-December, so there's plenty of time to sign up. So yeah, if people want to get some TTS, then yeah, I thought it would be good to give Trogdor's event a little bit of hype.
Well, that's exciting. I'm also at an event this weekend on Saturday. It's just a one-day here at the TSN Arena, but it's my birthday. So thankfully, the lovely intern Matt has said that he'll run the event, as I was previously running the event, and now I'm able to play in a field that includes both me and Nathan Prescott. So maybe one of the hottest tickets available in Age of Sigmar at the moment.
Wow.
You might get drawn about against either of us, which is fairly exciting. And I was going to take some Ironjawz, but the big drama is I'm now super excited about Pink Horrors again. So it's whether or not I want to put that much effort in at the weekend. That's the real question.
It's whether your opponents want to put that much effort in. Jesus.
They don't have to do much. They just have to stand there. Yeah? They have to watch someone work their hardest, roll in 180 dice, and be like, that's 3 wounds for you. You're like, why? I'm going to see if there's a dice app. But
So are you going to
anyway.
be singing It's My Party and I'll tag the shit out of your whole army and give you a game of Warhammer? Da-na-na-na-na. It's my birthday and I'll make you have an awful game.
Maybe. But that'll be fun. Right, so just having a quick look at the stats. Again, not all of the stats in at the moment, so we've got the events from the weekend and some more to add in. We've taken out some aberrant events, so events that had a 2-list format, or they included some form of comp, and lists are events that we will no longer include in the stats. Just if you want to do them, then fine, but they're a bit too aberrant for the stats. And as the YouTube thug who loves stats and hates me is about to say, of course, there's a load of granularity that needs to be achieved inside this, but it is interesting. Sons of Behemoth have actually gone up a little bit since last week, not because of this weekend's results, just as we put more data in. They're on a 60% win rate. They're the second best performing faction in the game. And the most popular, which is actually really interesting. Normally what we would see is the more popular a faction, the more it tends to hit that 50%. The fact that they're hitting 60% would, in my opinion, mean that there seems to be an issue with them as an army, because more and more people of different skill levels are able to do really well with that. We'll look at that result in a minute. Lumineth Realm Lords are sat on a 63% win rate. They're the most successful army at the moment. We'll see if that changes. In third place, joint third place, Daughters of Cain and Disciples of Tzeentch. I'm not surprised by either of those. But the big one is Legion of the Chaos Ascendant at 58% and Slaves to Darkness at 55%. So both of those two armies doing really well. I imagine many of that is hosted the ever-chosen Sixth Circle or generally Archaon lists anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that Archaon is definitely in some of those Disciples of Tzeentch lists. It's in the Legion of Chaos. No, it's not in Legion of Chaos. Sorry, it's in the Slaves to Darkness list as well. So Archaon really dominant in 2 different places in the meta at the moment. And then you've got, so those are maybe all of the problem children in 55% above. And then there's a nice big thick midfield: Flesh Eater Corpse, Fireslayer, Sylvaneth, Ossiarch, Seraphon, Ogre Moor Tribe, Soulblight, Gravelords, Maggotkin, all in those 50s percent area. Like, again, not in too bad a place. Cities and Bonesplitterz and KO, 48%. A lot of people saying KO terrible, but there's been some pretty good players pushing their numbers up. And then in the sad part of the world, Skaven on 39%, Ironjawz on, this is pre the new book, 38, Heed Knights on 36, Stormcast, again, pre the new book, 33, and then Beast of Chaos and Gloomspite Gits in that 30% bracket, which is not good. So
expect to see those Stormcast and Ironjawz shoot up. I don't know what they're gonna. They'll be knocking a few armies down, I think. But I think, much like you can see across the whole weekend, right? Well, if you've got an army that you love and you know it really well, you can score battle tactics and you can make it work and you can get a 4-1. So, I think that the Sons of Behemoth is an interesting one because they seem to have a very low sort of skill
Yeah,
floor.
yeah. I think that's super fair to say. One of the interesting things actually is that if like we would have done an old stat where actually if you just win 2 games with Gloomspite Gits, you're smashing how well you should do with them. So I think that's fine. But using the new stat that I like to push around a little bit at the minute. Obviously, we were talking about 4-1s. We'll go back to that in a minute. Oh, actually, we'll do that first. That actually makes the most sense. So in the 5-0 bracket, so doing really well. Tzeentch is at the top. Slaves to Darkness also in the top. And I think that's interesting. Both Disciples of Tzeentch and Slaves to Darkness in that top 10% of 5-0 finishes. But when you actually look at Slaves to Darkness, they do well 10%. So the second most performing army at 5-0s, but 13% at 4-1s. And then they do okay in the 3-0 finish. They're 35%. Disciples of Tzeentch, though, do really well at 5-0s. Okay in 4-1s and okay in 3-2s. So it looks like there's a lot of that. My interpretation in there is that it requires a little bit of skill to push those Disciples of Tzeentch lists around, is what I'm going to try and say. If you're skilled with them, you generally tend to do better. The LRL, though, is the interesting stat. We'll come back to that. Top of the 4-1 brackets is Daughters of Cain in a far away. They don't tend to 5-0 very much. 4% of the 5-0 finishes are Daughters of Cain, but 31% are 4-1s, so they're the kind of the queens of the 4-1 bracket, with quite a big difference down to Lumineth at 25%. But the kings, the legends...
Sorry, Rob, the chat is shouting at us, Rob. The screen hasn't changed.
What? What? It should do. Oh.
I'm not sure.
Oh, there we go, everyone. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why it didn't change. There we go. It should just change live. What if I change tab now?
There we go. Yeah. Here we go.
Oh, that's weird.
I didn't want you to carry on.
I have to refresh it. That's a weird one. What if I do this? Will that change it? Do this? Okay. I'm not sure why that happened, but cool. Anyway, top of the 3-2 bracket, Sons of Behemoth, Owen. 47% of all finishes are 3-2. Yeah? But if we look at our kind of like our big meta percentage here, Sons of Behemoth have the most popular army, 8.2% of the meta, but they have a 74% chance for a positive win rate stat. So your potential chance to have a positive win rate, i.e. 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, 74% is Sons of Behemoth, which is pretty crazy. That's pretty high ultimately. And you can see all of the problem children are actually in there. Lumineth Realm Lords are the highest at 75% to be ability to go 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, and you kind of think, oh, okay, Lumineth, I have to be quite good to have a positive win rate with Lumineth. And actually, the argument kind of says that's not true, because 75% of all players or all performances are like having a positive win rate, and I think that's quite interesting.
How hard is it to go drop Lawseeker, cast Lambent Light, shoot you with 30 Sentinel? Seem particularly difficult. I'm just being salty.
No, it's true. It's true, and it's not meant to be critical of the people playing it. What it's meant to be is like, oh, okay, that's quite interesting. Because actually, if I was to suggest an army to someone right now who's new, which is why we always produce the stats, I'd say you want to pick up Sons of Behemoth. Like, you're going to have a great time. He's going to push 4 models around. You're going to have a really interesting time. Daughters of Cain, same. I would not tell them to pick up Ironjawz, who only Skaven, who only 21% of their results at the moment, have a positive win rate. Yeah? Like, so that's not their win percentage, but like they only have 3-2, 4-1, or 5-0 is 21% of the time. And actually, when you go to a tournament, I think a tournament is either a win or a loss in your head, I would argue, whether or not you win more than you lose.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I would contradict you though. I would say that like taking War Babies as your first ever army, I think it will mechanically teach you how to go through the phases, but I don't think it'll really teach you how to play Warhammer. It'll teach you, what the shooting phase is, what the combat phase is, what the charge phase is. But when I say War Babies, I mean Sons of Behemoth. Sorry, but I don't think it's going to teach you about positioning and piling in and screening and you know what I mean.
Agreed. But similarly, I wouldn't give everyone Gloomspite Gits or Hedonites or Beasts of Chaos who are at like 18 or 14% of that chart. And the reason I wouldn't is because they're like, you're more than likely not going to have a positive win rate from the event. Yeah, you'll go 2-3, 1-0, or you'll lose all your games, and that just won't be very fun, right?
No, you're right. Yeah.
So.
I think you learn a lot though from lose. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you do learn a lot from losing.
But not that hard. That seems like they lose hard a lot. Whereas Sylvaneth are at that 50% mark. Age of Sigmar at 43. You could lose with Sylvaneth and have twice the chance to have a positive win rate.
Yeah.
Like you'll still be on the losing end of that, which I think is interesting.
I know it comes up a lot, Rob, but just as we're on it.
Yeah.
So from models, ease of play, fun, and your opponent's experience, what army would you recommend to somebody straight off the bat to play now? First army.
Ease of use to play. Oh God, that's a great question. Maybe Soulblight, because they've got really stripped back rules. You've got a lot of options, but there's a lot of synergy you have to kind of understand about itself. That's a great question. OC Arcs?
I think Ogres, man.
No, because so Ogres are in a really interesting point as well, right? So Ogres have you've got your positive win rate potential. So PWP, new stat, PWP is 40%. So you're already going to be on the losing end, which isn't bad. But don't forget, these are people who are pushing around Ogres to try to win. These are people who are like, I'm an Ogre player. I'm going to do well with Ogres. And then if you actually go and look at the win rate for Ogres, it's not great. Yeah, it's 50%, like it's just on that flat end. But that's people who play Ogres. Like if you're new, you don't have those skill sets to push them around that well. Like these are people who are good at Ogres, and the best that they're really achieving is 50-50. Whereas the people who are good with Daughters of Cain are getting a 60% win rate, and they're getting a 69, which is hilarious, like positive win rate potential, right? So like, I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know what the answer is. It's a great question. I'll have to like deep dive it and have a think. What do you think it is? Do you think it's Ogres still?
No, on reflection, like the guys in the chat have made some really interesting points around, operating in various phases, and I think maybe putting a Thunderstrike Stormcast army down, or Thunder, whatever the new Stormcast, putting that on the table might be fun. Your stuff's going to stick around. You've got shooting, you've got mortal wounds, you've got monsters, you've got a bit of everything.
I mean, Uruks is probably the one. That double Maw Crusher and a bunch of pigs. Like, you understand synergy. Like, right, War Chanter someone, synergy. Move everything forward, great. Charge, I understand how the always strikes first sort of thing, good. Done.
And my opponent understands how to take his army off. Or her on.
But I'm not sure. Have you got any kind of thoughts on? Because we haven't had on the show for. We haven't had the show for a while. Have you got any kind of thoughts to take away for the audience at the moment on lists, meta? What do you think at the moment? Chat, your time to say something.
I don't know. I've been in a few chats today, and I'm in a lot of chats, and there is a little bit of negativity bubbling up, and I'm a sucker for, I'm a sucker for being influenced, so I'm going to try and keep my thoughts my own, but there were some interesting points made. I think we often talk about faction diversity, and it does seem super diverse, but list diversity within those factions seems to be quite scant. I think that if you said they took a Calibron list, or they took a Breaker tribe list, or they took a Petrifex list, anybody who knows the game reasonably well will probably be able to pick out about 70 or 80% of that list straight away, which I don't think is brilliant for the game. But I do think it's a wonderful game. Don't get me wrong. I play enough of it. It's got to be great, right? But I just think it's in a funny place at the moment. So much is put on efficiency and reliability, And does that create predictability?
I'd say yeah, but we've got enough variables in the priority roll, right? Like that produces like some effects. Like I think you're right, which is why I've said that the Tzeentch dice plus Kairos is like easily like is S, because you've got achieve battle tactics in one, i.e. I will do charge X or Y, and then deny battle tactics, i.e. the Kairos dice versus the other, which I think is good as well. But the overall, I'm not sure. The thing that I take away from the weekend, maybe with the points differential, I was in a very different tournament setting to tournament settings I've been to through the rest of Age of Sigmar, in the differential made the conversation about how you won, and like it was more granular, and it felt like a really good conversation. Like it felt good. I think the game's in a really good. I think the game itself is really well done with the battle tactics and everything else. I mean, grand strategies are a joke bit, but that doesn't matter. I think like the battle tactics plus primary is actually really interesting, and the how you win and what degree you win by versus just you won or lost. I think that's a bit of a dull statement anyway. Like you don't like Arsenal beat Man U 5-0. Yeah, is very different to like a 1-0. It's a different chat. But people don't normally say that, do they? Right? So like, I think we don't have enough of a good conversation about how much people beat people by. They just say I won or lost, and that's maybe why it feels a bit predictable.
Yeah,
because the conversation is predictable.
But I think that you need to have that efficiency and reliability to win tournaments. So that's why these really good war scrolls are coming up. That's why everyone's taking Arcane Tome, Master of Magic. Like I know that Darren's a little bit, Darren Watson is a little bit down on list writing at the moment. He tweeted something out earlier because perhaps those wild times, maybe we're just looking back and thinking that it was great in AOS 2 when it was crazy, but maybe those wild combos and those little sleeper, those little bits of jank and those weird combinations between old war scrolls and new war scrolls, and that's all being cleaned up in favor of very efficient war scrolls, very efficient damage, the ability to be able to switch things on much more reliably, not needing hero support. I don't know. It may just be, Rob, that I watched people play Warhammer all weekend from afar, and I was really jealous, and I just got a bit salty. There's always that.
No, I do agree with you. I don't think lists will be as diverse as they were, but I'm not sure that they. I'm not even certain lists were diverse before. Ultimately, there's the fact that I know the Daughters of Cain list I'm going to be playing is more than likely a Morathian the Bowsnakes list is okay with me. Like, it's okay with me because I had a really good conversation at the weekend with Simon Weekly that I actually think that the Daughters of Cain win rate is really low because I think 80% of the games, and if you're one of them, I'm sorry, that I've seen people play, and in my head, they're playing it really badly. Like they're playing they're playing that army quite badly. And what I mean by that is you quite often see the Morathian the Bowsnakes in a scene where Morathian just gets thrown forward first, takes damage early, and then isn't able to hold off to keep the snakes alive later. And actually, if you use Morathi to countercharge from a castle, like you would see from a Lumineth list, kind of, you've played it more like a Teklian Lumineth list versus some sort of weird half and half list, you would end up with a better win rate. Now, this is just me, like, just talking out my arse, but maybe, like, the lists being more settled is actually a real positive because the skill cap will get higher. People will end up doing better with lists that they play time and time and time again. And actually it becomes kind of an interesting conversation about, like, okay, the list is settled that I know I'm going to play against, how do I unpick it? And their skill becomes more relevant. And ultimately, when we're doing coverage or when we're talking about tournaments, we want skill to be the most relevant piece of information. We want the skill level to be really cool. Like Games Workshop want all the lists to be different. Like they want them to buy all the models, and they're like, yeah, everything's everything, and maybe we do as well. But like from a pure tournament winning, tournament gaming perspective, only you don't mind that the lists are similar-ish, maybe for the next year or so, like versus different armies. And new books will come out, right? So we will have to adapt. You will have to adapt. You have a very different list. If I was to say design a list to beat the Lumineth 30 Sentinels versus the one to beat the Gargants, they're different lists that you would write.
Yeah, and that goes to a point. I did a few notes earlier, just thinking about the archetype lists that we've settled on. Then, if you're interested, I've broken it down into two big things, and I think Cabbage is touching on it in the chat as well, just to round out. But we've either got these what I'm calling stack heroes. So, your Gargants, Nagash, Archeon, the Maw-Crushers, and then Marathi is similar. I know you can't stack saves on her. So you've either got these big stack heroes, you've got shooty Death Stars, Rob. So 30 Sentinels, 30 Iron Drakes, 15 Bloodstalkers, and a delivery method for them. Either they've got crazy range or you've got a very reliable delivery method in the bridge for the Drakes. And then we're seeing a few more of these swampy lists. So Benjamin with his 60 Plague Bearers, which are a surprising hammer, or like lots of pinks. I mean, I've been looking at big swampy Mortec lists, for example. And then scalpel lists, I think, are the only other things we're seeing. So your 3 Foxes with Sentinels, or that Judicator list that Tom ran at the weekend feels like a very scalpel. And even Nagash with his Mortal Wounds is quite scalpely. But I think those are the problems that you're going to need to answer in list writing, and those are the archetypes that you see. If you want to win tournaments, you need to try and have a way to beat those. I don't know if you feel like that's where the meta's settled, or if there's anything I've missed. But that hero hammer, shooty Death Stars, or clog up the board.
At least it's a nice mix of a few things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the way in which each army does that, if it can do any of them at all, is very different. And I think some of them have weaknesses as well as strengths. I wouldn't mind seeing the Arcane Tome and I wouldn't mind just core core artifacts and stuff just to lead it out the game again, as we saw from. The ones we used to, Ethereal Amulet and all that other jazz. I wouldn't mind seeing them go by the wayside, because the books aren't really pointed with those in mind, ultimately, so it feels weird. But I'm really positive on it. I think everything's great. I think some armies need points changes, and I think things need looking around. But I think it's still super early. People are still learning the game. I've seen people fail Ferocious Advance, and when I've seen that happen, I know we're still early enough in the edition. Yeah. Right, that we're still early enough in the edition that there's loads to play for. And I think, Team Mancash is saying in the chat, we're going to have loads of battle tomes. They're going to shake up the meta. We're going to have loads of different lists, and I think that's really good as well. And also, as we've seen from the Uruk book and the Stormcast book, we might see how, Brutes now are brilliant. We haven't seen those lists yet, but Brutes are back, baby. And seeing a bunch of Brutes played is going to be really fun. The Ironjawz book isn't a particularly wide book anyway, but there's going to be more Bolt Boy lists put on the board at some point, which is going to be really nice. The rumoured Nurgle book is going to change up what we're going to see in those Nurgle things. We're going to see loads of Glotkins or Plague Drones, we don't know. The meta's going to change loads. And if I think about Age of Sigmar 2, when I was first doing that, 3 years ago, whenever, when we were doing the stats with LLV, we had... the most popular army was Stormcast and Legions of Nagash. You don't see Legions of Nagash anywhere now. So it'll change around, and it'll be fun. And I hope some of it is insane, so it causes spicy memes, because that's what I'm here for, Owen. Spicy memes. The main spicy meme I want is Owen Jackson to go 5-0 at every event. Join me Twitch chat on that one. That's what we're looking for, Owen.
I want to get a 5-0 with OBR, and then I'm going to move to my narrative Soulblight army, which I'm thinking about at the moment.
Right, well, Owen, thanks for today. It's been wonderful having you on.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm sorry that I've missed so many weeks. I was just, as I say, working for the man. For the man. The man sucks ass. But no, I've enjoyed this. I don't think I'm the most critical of thinkers in Warhammer. I just like having fun with my pals, but I think we have a nice little chinwag. I think somebody put there saying that the Stat Centre is the part with Owen and Rob this past year has been my favourite Monday morning activity to have my coffee with while I'm working from home. Well, Gorka Morka, thanks. Appreciate you, man. It's been one of my favourite things to do every Monday morning as well. Hey, Rob.
Same. The same. And it actually takes quite a lot of work to do in the morning. I need to end the show with, for me, a shout out to Ziggy, Rob, and the rest of the stats crew for helping us put all the stats together. You're all wonderful. We're hopefully going to get them finished and finalised. I know a lot of people are like, when can I see those stats or see the stats publicly? It's not until everything is fulfilled, because what I don't want to do is put out some like not full data. When I talk about it on the show, I say it's not full data. And I don't want to put it out there as images so that some like Facebook knuckle draggers can just start like shouting at each other over some silly stuff. So I want the full information suite to be in there, and then we're going to do a deep dive on the show about it, which is going to be really fun, and we'll have a long conversation, and it'll be really fun. And maybe I'll do a little interview with Ziggy and Rob and the rest of the guys about what they feel the stats say as well, because they've been doing a lot of it. So they've been really good. So Owen, you got any shout outs before we go?
I do. Very quickly. I just want to shout out the Welsh guys. A lot of them were at Bobo and at various tournaments, all did really well. So big love to those guys. I want to shout out the chosen ones. They know who they are. I hope they watch. They bring me joy with their salty comments and silly memes. And then just 2 individual shout outs. Dan Arnold, my fellow TO for the Six Nations. I believe that's his first 4-1. So the monkey's off his back. We all knew that he was a fantastic player of Warhammer. So I just want to give Dan, he's a wonderful human being. So big shouts to Dan Arnold. And finally, Darren Watson for being Darren. It's a kiss for you, sir. Have a great day.
There you go. I'm going to shout the guys from the Cobra Kai Club. I hope you're well, and all the guys in Sweden, as well as everyone else. Senior Players Event Pack for the weekend. Thanks, Iggy. To our Honest Warhammer special, this has been fantastic. Thanks, Glitterwall Vagabond. Joining me again tonight, when I'm going to be talking about Bonesplitterz Battle Tome, that final piece of the puzzle of the Uruk Warclans book. I actually think it's quite good. You can have some fun with it. Don't think it's brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe not quite as awful as maybe people have been saying about it. You got some play, which is really important. And thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been really cool. As always, this has been brought to you by people who subscribe to the Honest Warhammer Patreon. They subscribe on Twitch. Hydrate homies, stay hydrated. Twitch chat, you've been glorious. YouTube thugs, leave me alone today. Look after yourselves and see you soon. Bye.